Caitlin. Do you want to just give a quick wave to everybody?
Hi.
Caitlin is one of our awesome TE staffers. She is going to be answering questions in the chat box. So if you would like to chat with me, that's absolutely fine. Not a problem. See, we have a couple more people jumping on.
Sorry, I did that. Okay. I did.
So Sarah Zanman. Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi, Andrea.
Okay, so are we ready to get started? So, first things first, get your book. And I'm going to be doing this for, I know we've got bakers of all levels, so I'm going to be doing this straightforward, talking you through step by step. If you want to skip a couple of steps, go ahead, but we're going to be starting step by step. So the first thing we want to do is get our warm water going. You want it to be kind of finger warm. You don't want it to be boiling hot because otherwise you're going to kill your yeast. You can do this recipe with active dry yeast or with instant yeast. The only difference would be is that if you're using instant yeast, you will not bloom it. So if you're using active yeast, go ahead and get that ready. You're going to take the 1 tablespoon of dry yeast and put that in your bowl. And you're going to get 1 1/3 cup of warm water. And you're going to go ahead and add that to the bowl as well. Give it a little bit of a stir so that there's no major clumps. And at the same time, we want to add your 1/3 cup of sugar. I actually use just under 1/3 cup of sugar. I don't like my challah super sweet, so I use a little bit under 1/3 cup. You could also substitute maple syrup, honey, agave, any kind of sweetener that works for you. You're welcome to substitute kind of, due to your taste. I would start on the lower end of the 1/3 cup. If you don't like things super sweet, go a little bit under. And another thing to keep in mind, if you do decide to use maple syrup, it is a little bit more watery, so use a little less water. And now we let it sit for a minute and we let it bloom. Anybody have any questions?
If it's instant yeast, it won't bloom.
If it's instant yeast, you don't have to worry about blooming it. You can just add it into the dough. You don't have to skip that step.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. And so this normally takes, this will also depend on the warmth of your kitchen. So what I also like to do is around this time is I'll turn my oven on to 375, let my kitchen warm up a little bit. The yeast blooms better and your dough will also rise better in a warmer spot. In the summertime, you don't have to do that as much. But when it's a little chillier out, it's definitely better to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my oven on. And again, that's on to 375, which is what we're going to bake our challah at. And so now I'm going to bring you over really quickly and show you if you've never seen yeast blooming. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's little like bubble flower things forming. That's what you want from your yeast. That's where all the goodness and making your dough rise is going to come in. All right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to crack 1 egg into a bowl. You don't have to crack it into a bowl. I do it this way because 9 times out of 10, I end up with shell in my bowl, and I don't really want shell in my cup. So, yeah. Everybody with me? Do I need to slow down a little bit?
With you.
Great. Okay, let me see some action in the chat.
On the yeast, is the proportion the same for the instant versus the other?
It's exactly the same. Yep, it's a 1-to-1 ratio.
Okay, because I was reading online that it was a different ratio.
For bread, it's usually a 1-to-1 ratio. It's different than like baking cookies and stuff like that. Yep. But usually for this kind of bread, it's a 1-to-1.
Got it. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 1/3 cup of vegetable oil, canola oil, simple, oil like that. I'm going to add 1/3 cup of that. I'm also going to add my egg at this time.
Oh.
I'm going to just kind of break my egg and give a bit of a gentle stir to kind of combine all of this. And then I go ahead and I add about a tablespoon of salt at this point. And now we're going to start getting ready to make our dough. So I have in this bowl over here, I have 4 cups pre-measured of all-purpose King Arthur baking flour. Very simple flour. This recipe does well with bread flour as well. I just prefer the stretchiness of the all-purpose flour. So I'm going to start adding it, my first 2 cups in. And I'm just going to gently start mixing it and combining it all together. And while you're doing this, it's really important to make sure that everything is combined really well before you start adding your next cup of flour. And as you can see, it starts coming together pretty quickly. It's kind of really wet and sloppy at this point, and that's okay. I'm going to start, at this point, I'm going to start adding my flour a little bit slower. So I'm going to add about 3/4 of a cup now. And you'll see as you start doing this, it's going to start forming your dough. So somebody had asked before, normally when I do this, I use my trusty stand mixer over here. It's a lot easier. It makes things a lot, simpler, more straightforward. You put it in and kind of machine does all the work, but we're going to do this by hand today. So when you do it by hand, you kind of want to really feel what the dough feels like.
Excuse me, Andrea.
Yep.
I am doing it with the machine, so I'll mute myself, but should I put it on like to mix it or with the machine, or should I do it by hand to first mix?
Machine. Stick it straight in the machine and let it go. Okay. I normally start it on 1 until the flour is somewhat incorporated, and then I'll move it up to about a 3 on my mixer. Okay. And let it get all incorporated, and then I'll stop it and add the next cup at a time.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So as you guys can see, it's starting to come together in more of a dough form right now. It's still pretty wet. And I'm going to keep adding my dough a little bit slower because it's a little bit drier in my kitchen today. So here's the interesting thing about this recipe is that the recipe itself calls for 4 cups of challah, but it really depends on the humidity in the air. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit less than 4. Sometimes it might be a little bit more than 4. So I really don't like to just dump it all in at the same time and let it go. I really need to feel the dough and see how it kind of incorporates and comes together. And now you can really see it's looking like a dough. So I'm going to get rid of my spoon at this point, my spatula, and I'm going to start kneading it by hand. And so it's pretty sticky. So now I'm going to start just adding handfuls of flour at a time and start kneading it in the bowl as I go. And you'll see it kind of starts coming together. How's your dough feeling out there? Let me know what's going on. Crickets. Everybody's busy mixing their dough. Caitlin, do you mind?
Andrea, I'm trying to help some people get on. There's a number of preschool families that didn't know the password.
Okay.
So
we can go ahead and walk through the recipe again, Lois. It's not a big deal.
Well, we'll see if they make it on.
Okay.
So what do you mean by how it feels? Like how do you know?
I'm going to show you. Give me 1 second. It's still a little bit sticky.
Or coming together. What does that mean?
So before you saw it was really, really wet. Now you can see I can hold it together and it's not sticking in my hands. It still looks super flaky though, which is not what we want. So once it's at this stage, you really want to keep mixing and kneading it. And what we're doing right now when we're kneading it is we're making the gluten and the flour come together. And that's mixing with all of your yeast and all your other ingredients. And it's going to sit and that's going to form together and that's going to then rise and kind of make glorious things happen. I don't know all the chemistry of what goes on there, but it's going to be fun. And then at the end of it, you're going to
recipe. And heat the milk to a temperature of 100 to 110 degrees.
Somebody's got their oven on. Lois, are you there?
I am.
Dorothy's texting me. Can you help her? I can't get to my phone right now.
I'm working on that right now.
Thank you. Caitlin, can you do me a favor and just email Lois the URL from the web from where we're on right now, and they should be able to get in from there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to show you. You can see it's kind of starting to come together a little bit more. You guys see the difference? It's kind of mixing in there. And I had only 4 cups measured. I still have about maybe 2/3 of a cup left. I haven't even combined in yet. So that's why it's really important to go slow. And now what I'm gonna do, if you have the space to do this, you can continue to knead it in your bowl. It's completely up to you. Personally, I prefer to knead it on my countertop. So I'm gonna flour my countertop nicely, give quite a bit of flour. And then I'm gonna bring my dough over. Make sure you get all that stuff at the bottom of the bowl. Good stuff. And now when I'm kneading, I'm gonna bring from the outer side. Here, let me move this. I'm gonna move this. You guys aren't gonna get to see my face, but you can see what I'm doing down here. Can you see that?
Can you move it a little bit closer, Andrea?
I can try. My sink's in the way though. How's that? Better?
Yes.
Okay. So what you want to do is you want to flatten your dough just slightly. Be gentle with it. You're going to pull it towards you and gently push it out. Turn the dough. Pull it towards you, gently push it out. And this is how you're going to knead the dough. If it's feeling sticky at all, just add a little bit more flour on the top and then continue to do that. You want to push, turn, push, turn, push. And this is how you're going to knead your dough until it all kind of combines and comes together.
What number would you do for kneading on the mixer?
So once all of my flour is combined, I usually put it on maybe a 4.
Okay.
And just let it go for about 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So again, as I said, when I use my stand mixer, it's a lot quicker. I can multitask and do some other things at the same time. But it's sometimes fun. This is a great way to get out aggression. Kneading dough is an awesome way to work on frustrations, kind of get those feelings out from the week. And everyone, I'm turning it so I'm not kneading in the same spot. And then you're going to see it's really starting to come together like a dough. It's kind of looking a little bit like pizza dough at this point. We still want it to get a little bit smoother than that. So we're going to keep kneading it. Keep going. Anybody have any questions?
So it still feels a little sticky.
Yep, so add some more flour.
Okay.
So as you knead it, it should be a little bit stickier, which means you're going to need to add a little bit of flour. But be really careful at this point of not adding too much. If you always add more, you can't take flour out.
Well, does the extra flour make it tough, Andrea?
It does. It makes it really tough. And I find that if I've over floured it, it doesn't rise as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
I don't know if that works for everybody, but I kind of find that it, so you don't want your dough to be completely dry. You still want it to have a little bit of tackiness, but you don't want it to stick to you completely when you touch it.
Okay.
Kind of like, you know, if you touch the back of a piece of tape and your finger touches it but doesn't stay stuck to it, and it's lost a little bit of its tackiness, that's what you're going for with the challah. I'm getting a little too sticky. I'm going to add a bit more of my dough. I mean, my flour, sorry. And so when you're kneading challah dough, it's really important not to rush this particular step because this is what's going to create that awesome rise on your dough. So you want to keep kneading it. It's going to take a good probably anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes of kneading by hand to get it to this point. And about probably, 4 to 6 minutes kneading it with a dough hook on your mixer. And so my dough's really starting to come together nicely.
So Andrea,
Yep.
can you talk about if you use a bread machine, if you get it to this point and then you put it in a bread machine or something?
So I got to be completely honest. I've never used a bread machine in my life.
Okay. You're not a bread machine person.
About it. I would assume from what I've heard, it's very much like just skipping the rising steps. So you actually proof it in the bread maker, I believe.
Yeah.
And then bake it from there.
Okay.
But to be honest, I've never actually used a bread maker.
Okay.
I prefer the old-fashioned way. Oven works really, really well.
Hi.
I
Do
think
you have
you
any
can look up,
questions on that has questions or would like some information?
I think you can look up online directions for a bread machine because you can rise it in your bread machine and everything. Too.
Yeah. It just becomes like a proofing box.
Ah, okay.
You can also call King Arthur Flour. They have a hotline. They're very helpful.
I've
That's
actually made it. I've actually made the dough in the bread machine and then taken it out and braided it and then baked it from there.
So when you
So
when
I
you
put
said you
everything.
made
I
the,
put,
you've made the dough, that means you took all the stuff, the ingredients, and then you let it do its own rising and kneading and rising?
yeah. So I put everything in how how you followed the directions before. You put the liquids in the bottom and then you let it all do the kneading and everything. And then I take the dough out and then I braid it and then bake it. So I let the machine do all the hard work.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But I feel like this is better. The old fashioned way is a little bit tastier.
Yeah. I find
It's
it gives it a good
why
taste.
is it
Okay, so-
tastier? Why is it tastier?
This is perfect.
I don't know. I think it's probably a little more kneading and a little more love that goes into it.
Ah, okay. I like love.
You can definitely taste it. Okay, so my dough, I'm not sure where you guys are, but my dough is just about done kneading. And you can see how it's become a little bit smoother. Block that shadow. And then when you put a finger in it, it kind of stays a little bit dimpled. That's what you want. That's kind of how you know that your dough is ready. And so I actually didn't use all of my flour hand kneading. Let's see how much. I said I've got just under a half a cup left of flour. So that was about 3.5 cups that I used. And so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same bowl that I mixed the dough in originally, and I'm going to generously flour the bottom. So give a generous flour. And then I'm going to dump my dough into it. I'm going to grab a clean dish towel. Put it on the top, and now you're going to put this somewhere warm and dry to rise. I normally put it on top of my oven, on top of another dish towel. So I put another dish towel underneath it, so it's not touching directly to the oven. And then I'm going to let it sit there, and then I'm going to show you what it's going to turn into. Before I do that, does anybody have any questions at this point?
Andrea, I've always used a damp dish towel to put over it. Is there, do you
If
know?
you've over floured, you can use a damp dish towel. I find that the damp dish towel actually adds too much moisture. I think a dry dish towel is absolutely fine because you're really only letting it sit. Hold on, let me turn it back.
Now, some people I know actually put their dough to rise in the oven, not.
If you do that, make sure your oven's off though. Don't put it in a hot oven, either at like the lowest setting on your oven. You can turn your oven on to like 250, let it come to temperature, shut it off and put it in the oven. Becomes a proofing box. I find that just, my oven, my kitchen is fairly small, so it doesn't take much to heat it up. So I just turn my oven on, let it run, and now it's going to run until I bake my challah. So I put it on when we started making the dough. My kitchen's now pretty warm. Here, and I can show you what it looks like. So it's just sitting on top of my stove, on top of a dish towel, and my oven's on to 375.
A mixer.
Somebody have a question?
I have a mixer question.
Sure.
So my dough is still really sticky.
So add some more flour.
Okay, and just keep kneading.
How many cups have you added so far?
I did do the 4.
Okay.
And
Still sticky?
So I would add small amounts, maybe at a quarter.
What is the cup? I can't hear you. Couldn't hear you.
Okay, if it's a little bit tacky, but you don't want it to be sticky.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
So I have a light that's right above my oven.
Yep.
It gives off heat. What do you think of that?
Try it.
Okay.
Tricky.
So here's one of the things I love being in the kitchen and trying new things. I mean, you can read 10 different websites on how to make challah, and you're going to get 10 different answers to every question that you have. Every
I've
baker
noticed.
is going to have their own way to do it. So try it once. If it doesn't work this time, then you know it wasn't warm enough. If it works, then you know that that's your source of heat to help your challah rise. Trial and error. I mean, yes, the recipe itself is very much a specific recipe, but in terms of like everything else, it's just a lot of trial and error and kind of figuring out what works for you.
Andrea, what kind of flour did you use? I used bread flour.
So you can use any flour for this recipe. Personally, I use King Arthur all-purpose flour.
Okay.
If you use bread flour, you're going to kind of have to play around with it. You may need to use a little less. I know some people do, if they're using bread flour, if they don't like that super bready texture, they'll use half bread flour and half all-purpose flour.
Okay.
Again, it's just a matter of playing around with it and seeing what comes up, what works for you. I've been working on this recipe now for maybe 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And it's just within like the last year, because every time I do it, I try something different. I've tried it. Also, for anybody who has egg allergies, it's super easy to make this an egg-free challah. Just substitute the egg for an additional 1/3 cup of oil. So you can make it egg-free very easily. Gluten-free, there are substitutes for flour. You would have to look up what the alternatives are in terms of ratio. I'm not sure exactly what that would look like. But this recipe is really easy to sub. You can add less salt, you can add more flour, you can change for honey. But the easiest sub, if you want to make it an egg-free challah, is to sub an additional 1/3 cup of oil for the 1 egg. It's also a really easy recipe to double, which is what I've done here. Show you guys.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, look at that.
This is
So Andy, that's a
after-
doubled recipe?
So I literally just took the recipe and doubled it.
Okay.
Just doubled it. So the regular recipe, if it rises correctly, should give you 2 medium-sized challahs or 1 large challah. So depending on how you want to divide it up and how big or small you want to make your challahs. So I doubled the recipe so we can do some braiding stuff. I wanted to go over some different braiding techniques with you guys. And so I doubled it just to make a few extras. So this is after about an hour and 20 minutes maybe rising in my kitchen. And so it's got beautifully and round, and now I'm just gonna punch it down.
Oh, shame.
Hey, Andrea,
Yeah,
I just wanted to add, as a person who has always worked, that I would make this Thursday night and then put it and have it rise in the refrigerator overnight. And then in the morning I would punch it down and then put it back in the refrigerator while I went to work. And then it was done the second rising when I would get home.
you can. I personally, with this particular recipe, I don't find that it rises really well in the fridge.
Oh, really?
That's just a personal thing. I don't think it rises as well as it does out on the counter. But there have been many days, like you can actually shorten the rise. You don't have to let it rise. The shortest amount of time that I would do on my first rise for this is 45 minutes. So if you're in a rush, if you get home, and you're in a super rush, you can do that. I've also made my challah the night before, and then I just wrap it in tin foil and use it the next day. So, but again, it's personal preference, right? If you want to do it you can definitely try it. It may work for you in the refrigerator.
Andrea,
Yes.
when I was teaching and making challah every week, I would put it in, I might make the dough and put it in the freezer after
Yep.
the first rise and punching it down. And then when I pull it out, I would immerse the plastic bag that I'd frozen in warm water. And then I'd let it do a second rise before I made it.
Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know, putting it in the refrigerator, the yeast will still continue to work. It just works at a much slower pace. If you put it in the freezer, it actually completely stops it. So you could theoretically make dough up to this point. You could make a month's worth of challah dough, divide it up, put it in airtight containers or in Ziploc bags. I would double Ziploc it. Put it in your freezer and pull them out as you need, and then we could start at this step again. So this is a really, really forgiving dough. It's really hard to mess this one up.
So right now, we're gonna let what we have, our dough on the oven top for an hour and a half.
It's up to you. I was a minimum of 45 minutes.
Okay,
and kind of see how much it's risen. If it's at least doubled in size, then you're good to go. Just because mine only sat for an hour and a half because I've been, waiting to get to this point and getting ready to go. Normally, I would say 45 minutes to an hour with a warm kitchen is enough for the rise. All right, so I'm happy to go over some braiding techniques with you guys. Are there any specific requests?
Can I have
Yes.
one question? First time I've made it. I've never done this before, so
Oh, mazel tov. We should say
Thank you. how do I know that I've added enough flour? Because I've done the 4 cups. It's still a little sticky.
Who's talking right now?
And
And can you show me your dough?
Oh,
Can you just do this with it? Like, do your fingers come off pretty easily, or is it still pretty tacky?
it's still a little tacky.
So I would add a little bit more flour,
Okay,
but then what I would do is when you put it in your bowl to rise, make sure you put a good amount of flour underneath and some flour on top.
got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Andrea,
Caitlin.
it's
Thanks,
Terry.
Caitlin. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put my challah dough that I'm not using in a bowl with a cover on it, just so that it doesn't dry out. All right, I have to do a 3 braid, a 4 braid, a 6 braid. We can do little rolls. Any requests?
4 braid.
4 braid? Sure.
And rolls.
Sure.
Can you make a pull apart challah?
So that's super easy, actually. All you do is you make balls and put it in a round tin and kind of
Oh,
stack them on top of each other.
okay.
There isn't really much of a technique. It's just really important when you do that, you want to make sure that you glaze it really, really well and glaze in between all the little pockets. All right, so we're going to do a 4 braid challah. So what I do is I make a little bit of a log, try and make it as even as possible. I'm going to have it, and then I'm going to have it again to try and get 4 even pieces. And there, I mean, you guys are welcome to come back and watch this one once it's on YouTube, but there's also some great video tutorials out there on braiding that you can put them on while you're doing it and kind of do it along with them.
Yeah.
Do you recommend a certain rolling pin or a certain kind of rolling pin?
I don't use a rolling pin, I use my hands.
Oh, oh,
We're not
okay.
making it flat, we're gonna actually make snakes.
So you, at no point do you roll out the dough?
Nope, not
Okay,
for challah.
okay.
So it's what's really nice about this recipe and what I really like is that it's super simple and pretty much so long as you have the ingredients that you need, a bowl and an oven, you can do it anywhere.
Great.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of get my dough out to like a nice snake. And the length of it is really going to depend on how much dough you're using. So my dough's really dry right now. I put too much flour down on the board. So I'm going to take my hands, I'm going to run the water, and I'm literally just going to sweep my hand under the water and just kind of wet them just barely, just to make my dough a little bit more malleable. And so I want to end up with something that looks like this. And I'm going to make 3 more of these.
How long is that rope? You think?
Maybe 6 or 7 inches.
Okay.
So I would err on the side of caution with this. If you make them super thin and super long, you're going to end up with a super long, super thin challah. If you make them slightly thicker and a little bit shorter, you end up with a little bit more of a compact, rounder challah.
Okay.
And the other thing to be careful of is that when you're rolling it, you really want to make sure you have an even roll along the snake. You don't want to have any super thin parts or any super thick parts. And it's okay if 1 or 2 of the pieces are a little bit longer or shorter because we can kind of finagle that around when we're doing the actual braid where they end up. So like this one's maybe an inch longer. It's okay. And so this is really fun. My daughter often helps me with this, but she's doing schoolwork right now. Is I will often break off half the dough and then she kind of gets to do her own thing, braid how she wants. She's been practicing some serious braiding. And then we kind of each do our own thing. So for little kids, if you have kids or grandkids around who are helping you, this is a really nice way to include them in this. Okay. So now I'm going to move you guys a little bit closer here. How's that for view? Is that good?
Perfect.
Perfect.
That's
Oh,
good.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take my dough and I'm going to lay it out like this. And I'm going to connect the top. And you want them to actually be stuck together. So you don't want these to be separate. You want this to now be one piece of dough at the top.
Did you flour the baseboard first
I
before
did not, because mine is pretty dry right now. If it's really wet, I would, but mine's pretty dry at the moment. So I didn't. Okay. This is an over-under for braid. So I'm going to take my snake all the way to the right. I'm going to go, so let's label this 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to take 4 over 3, under 2, and over 1.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
We're going to keep going. It's the same thing. It doesn't change. That's the braiding.
Can
So
you
I take
repeat?
from the right,
Over one.
all the way over this one,
Under the other
over
one.
the next one, and over.
Ah,
Like
I'm
weaving.
actually going to end up turning as I braid it. I'm going to take my one all the way to the right, over, under, over. And then you guys can see it's kind of starting to form a braid.
brilliant.
Ooh.
Looks good.
Brilliant. Oh, I love that. That's
Take all the way to the right, over. At this point, you're going to want to bring these a little bit to your right, so because otherwise it's going to get a little bit lopsided. So I'm still going to go over, under, over. Take my right one. It's always the one all the way to the right. I guess you could start from the left, but I'm right-handed, so it works for me this way. Over, under, over. And that's what you keep doing the entire braid. Over, under, over, over, under, over. And then once you get to the very end here with these extra pieces, you can either just kind of take them and kind of like bunch them up. I actually like chopping it off because it gives a nice clean connection at the end. And that's your braid.
That's
a full braid
gorgeous.
challah.
That looks great.
Wow. I wonder if I hope I can do that.
What do you do with your extra?
So this is what I normally put in the oven. I mean, in the freezer to burn. But for those
Can you
who
talk
don't,
about that?
I didn't.
Will
Joni, do
you?
you want to talk about that for me?
Yeah, Joni, please.
Oh, God. I wait a minute. I have to put on my Temple Emanuel challah bake hat.
Please do.
Well, one of the biggest mitzvot that a woman can do is to bake challah. And when you bake challah, it's actually a religious experience. And so what do? You make a bracha. And in order to, now when I bake challah, if I'm making less than 5 pounds, you just take the challah, you take a hunk like Andrea just did, and you burn it without a bracha. But with 5 pounds, 5 pounds or more, that's when I guess that's the given amount. You make a bracha.
The reason why I'm doing this today is I actually used 8 pounds between all the doughs that I'm making. So that's why I'm using this amount.
Okay,
Aha.
so how do you burn the challah?
You put it in a piece of tin foil and
Yeah.
you put it in the oven and you just let it sit and sit and sit and sit while the oven is on and while stuff is baking. And in order to do it, let me see.
It'll eventually just disintegrate.
Okay.
Here.
So
So
And
a question, Jonah and Andrea and Terry, whoever can answer it. I have not done the mitzvah of taking challah, although I've made challah. when do you say the blessing? Do you say the blessing after it's all
Okay.
burnt up or when you put it in the oven?
Before you put it in the oven, you cover the dough and you recite the following blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu lahafrish challah. And that means, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to separate challah. Then you take a piece of the dough, approximately the size of an egg, you lift it and you declare, Hare zu challah. This is challah. And you set it aside to be completely burned and discarded. And also, by the way, there are those of us who feel that this is a very special time when you're baking challah, because it is a holy moment. And it's the time that you can make a little prayer for yourself or for your loved ones for whatever reason.
And if anybody's interested, we can put the prayer and the meaning behind it on the website so you can find it there. Caitlin, if you can just make a note about that.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
great.
Thank you, Joni.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thanks for asking.
I was going to ask, but somebody.
Thank
got me
you,
before.
Joni.
Thank you. Always looking for a new opportunity to say a blessing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
there's a blessing for everything.
Absolutely.
May the COVID stay far, far away from us.
Right. Amen. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Tara, you had asked about little rolls, little challah
Yep.
buns.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just going to use this as an example. So I would start out with a little snake, like so, lift it up, twist it, and just make a little knot with it.
It's so cute.
So like the garlic knots that you can get in restaurants.
Yeah.
I like that. And can you use those knots for the pull apart?
You could. I don't see why you couldn't.
Okay.
It's just more of a package.
This might be a little bit bigger than what I would use for the pull apart. I might do a smaller one.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see why you couldn't. Sugar? So challah is such a personal thing. You really can do whatever you want. One of my favorite things, one of my favorite ways to make challah is I'll take this 4 grade, I'm actually going to do it tonight, and I'll chop up about a half an onion or a small yellow onion, put it with some olive oil, a little bit of olive oil, some salt and pepper, and I put it on the tray underneath the challah, and then I lay the challah on top of it, and the onion actually bakes into the challah.
Cool.
Oh,
It's
right.
really delicious. And then I'll just egg the top of it, a little bit of salt on the top, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something else
So
that's
we've-
really good is just
Andrea, will you say that again? What do you put under the challah?
sure. So I chop up a yellow onion,
Okay.
either about that size, so like a
Yeah.
small-ish yellow onion. Chop it up into small pieces. A little bit of olive oil, salt and pepper. Mix it up and lay it on the tray underneath, and then put the challah on top of that and bake it in the oven.
Delicious.
My
Something
daughter
else-
sent me these picture from last Shabbat. One has the everything bagel seasoning on it.
Yep.
One of them has za'atar on it.
Yep.
And the other she just made sweet with just egg wash and lots of honey inside.
I like to put sesame seeds on mine.
Oh, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
we've been doing everything, Challah. So, and I didn't have the everything container, so I just mixed my own sesame and salt and
Perfect.
whatever. So,
if you do not have your dough and just make a full 4 braid with the dough that you just made, this is what it's going to look like.
Gorgeous.
Oh,
yeah.
gorgeous.
Mazal.
Oh
Okay.
my
Is
God.
that
good.
Sesame seeds on top?
So this actually has everything but the bagel seasoning,
Oh,
which is sesame seeds,
okay.
poppy seeds, garlic, onion. But you could do whatever you want.
Wow.
Okay,
This is
what
what a
time
4
is
braid will
dinner?
look like once it's baked.
All right, I'm coming.
I want
by.
that one.
Andrea,
What time do we
put
come
that up
over?
and baggy it.
Yeah, right.
Have a
So
sample.
here's the thing, I'm gonna have plenty of extras. If anybody's
Leave it on the porch. We'll be there.
One more time. Can you pick it up one more time? Show it.
Absolutely. So this is a completed challah.
Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
My husband.
Can you talk about baking?
Yep, I'm gonna get there next. That's gonna be the next thing
Okay.
we're gonna do. So
Wow, beautiful.
what we're gonna do now is this challah needs to rise again a second time. So it's not done yet. So I'm gonna I need to spray this with a nonstick spray.
That was my question.
Yep. So I'm gonna use a quick nonstick spray for light coating. You could also use butter or oil, whatever you use as your nonstick surface, or use a nonstick pan. Completely up to you. And then I'm gonna take my challah and I'm gonna let it sit here, uncovered. Again. Now, what works for me may be different than what works for you, but what I like to do is I will do a second rise of a half hour on this. So I'm gonna let this sit for a half hour on the stove, uncovered, but on a dish towel so it doesn't get too much heat. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my egg wash, which is just an egg beaten with a little bit of water, beaten up, and I'm gonna brush it and let it rise again for another half hour. Some people don't do the second rise with the egg wash. That's a completely personal thing. I think it comes out better that way. My own personal choice. So again, I'm gonna let this sit for a half hour, let it rise. Then I'm gonna egg wash it, let it rise again. And I actually do a second egg wash because what happens is when it rises, you saw on this challah, I actually probably didn't let it rise properly because there's some of these splits. So if you do the second egg wash, it helps put the shot.
What? Does the
Got a question?
What does the second egg wash do?
So you can see this challah has some of these little white, it's not as brown everywhere.
Yes.
So the second egg wash will get into all those crevices and give it a completely brown look.
Okay.
Does anybody have questions about baking?
So you said 375 for a half hour?
No, so I do 25 minutes. But again, it's based on the heat of your oven. So at about 20 minutes, I would check it. There are two ways of checking it. My favorite way of checking it, you guys hear that?
Yeah, hollow.
Yep, sounds kind of hollow. If you can't, if it's too hot, just take a spatula and lift it and check the bottom, and it should look like that.
Perfect. Wow.
How about when you take it out of the oven and you want it to cool, do you put it on a rack or?
So I honestly leave it on my baking sheets to cool and then I transfer it to a rack. So I do
Okay.
both.
All right.
If you just leave it on the tray, the bottom can get a little bit soggy.
Right, right.
So but I don't put it on the rack right away. I usually let it cool for about 20 minutes or so on the tray and then I transfer it.
Okay.
Andrea, what about baking it on parchment? Because I've done that also.
Yeah. Again, that just takes place of the nonstick spray.
But it still browns as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not, the only thing is I've never tried the onion on parchment, so I'm not sure how that would work.
Oh, yeah,
Really?
no, actually, when I do that, when I bake it on parchment, it's usually just the plain ones.
So Joni, since we
Yeah.
have you, my daughter asked this question. You know those tins that you can buy only in New York? I've never seen them in Boston.
Yeah, but you know what? You can get them on Amazon.
Okay, so can you just talk about them so people know what we're talking about?
Oh,
Yeah.
let me go get one. I'll be right back.
Oh, even better. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
You're not on. You're on.
Caitlin, is Andrea done?
Yeah,
You're on
no,
mute.
sorry.
Oh, thanks.
Sorry. Thanks, Caitlin. These tinfoil trays work just as well. Just make sure you spray them down. I know they're not great for the environment, but if I'm baking a lot and I don't have enough cookie sheets, this is a great standby. You just let it do its rise in here and then stick it straight in the oven and it's good to go.
I have a question. I just moved here, so not everything is up here because I moved up here in a hurry, the health
Yep.
reason. I don't have any trays. They're still in my other property. Any suggestions for,
Do you have tinfoil?
I'm sorry?
Do you have tinfoil?
Yes,
So what I would do is your oven on already?
it's on, but I'm not baking it yet. I'm letting
Okay.
it rise.
So what I would do is I would actually just lay some tinfoil sheets down on the racks and just put it on that.
Oh, okay, but I'm thinking of the cooling process. I don't have a
Oh.
rack cooling.
Just leave your oven open. Let it cool in the oven. Make sure your oven's off. Leave the door open and just let it cool.
Okay,
Again, the cooling racks are not a necessity. You can let it cool on the counter. You can let it cool on a tray, on a plate. I would just flip it then if you're cooling it that way so that the underside can cool down and doesn't get too wet.
got it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so here's the pan.
Oh,
Here's
can
the
we
little-
focus on Joni?
Okay,
Hold on a second.
it's an oval.
Hold on, Joni.
Can we see
Yeah.
Joni?
Yeah.
So they sell these oval things.
You can also get a whole load of pans at Costco if you want to buy in bulk. They sell,
Right.
let's show you.
But this is what it is. And you can, you know what? I will send you, Terry, I'll send you the manufacturer's name and address. But guess what? It's made in China.
Of course.
Oh,
Well,
Make challah in China?
Okay,
and I can give it to you. But I think that Robin Birnbaum told me that they sell them on Amazon.
okay.
But they also sell them at amazing savings in New York,
what,
which is where I get them.
what are they called?
Let me tell you exactly
It's
what
a
it
The
holiday
label
pan.
says medium.
It says medium oval baking pan.
Oval
they-
baking pan.
By the way, okay, kids, there's a website. Boy, they is me. Let me see.
If anybody can
www.
zoom in on,
KIN as in Nancy, Z, KINGZAK.com.
So can you type that into
KING.
chat?
Oh, I could probably do that, yeah.
What was it? K-I-N-G?
Wait a minute. Let me
He's gonna put it in the chat.
Terry, where do I find the chat?
If you go to the upper right-hand corner,
where it
and
says
where
more.
it says more, and you press on that, chat will come up.
Or the bottom, depending on the screen that you're
Yeah,
using.
depending on your screen, top
Yeah.
or bottom.
On
Okay.
my
What are you doing
computer, on the
now?
bottom, there's a menu and it says chat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there, I see it. Thank you. Thank
So
you.
what are
thank
you doing now, Andrea?
Grade.
Sixth grade. Uh-oh.
That's a scary one.
Okay.
Not to interrupt, but I'm holding up a rectangle, and if anybody's a Costco member, they do sell them in bulk, and I buy these because then when I bake brownies or anything, I can give them away and not worry about my pan coming back.
It's a great idea.
Here, this is the size, the depth, you can see. And I can't remember if they're 20, 24, but they're great for giving away and baking. And
And
that's
is that the kind that comes with a plastic cover or just the
Yes,
bottom foil?
well, it has a plastic wrap. Unfortunately, I took it apart, so I can't tell you how many it was.
Okay, no.
I just moved here and this is a good disposable for me. I'm right now in transition.
I'm pretty sure it's 2 dozen.
It probably is, but you know,
Yeah.
this is great and you can keep them, you know, forever. And they're
Right.
great for whatever you want to make and give away, chicken dishes, whatever.
Let me ask you guys this. We did a 4 braid. I was going to do a 6 braid. Would you prefer a 3 braid?
No, do a 6th grade.
I'd love to be a 6th braid.
6 is more complicated.
Yes, I know 6th grade. 6th grade, you have to keep track of their numbers.
Gee, you have to learn how to count. I don't know.
1 through 6. We don't go to 10.
Oh yeah, there are 10 braids. I mean, when we were doing this for the challah bake last year, there were
Oh.
videos of every number in the world. It was amazing.
Really?
So
Yeah,
6
odd,
is fine with
even,
it.
whatever. Some people are, and then there's the people that make shapes. Like, there's a rabbi in Burlington, Massachusetts, who wrote a book with turkeys and trees of life and all kinds of stuff that she makes for different holidays.
After Pesach, the first one after Pesach, did you see the key, Challah?
Yeah, what was with the key?
Oh, but I think it's one of those, what my son refers to as a heebie-jeebie. I think it's a Chabadnik thing or a Kabbalistic. I don't know. Something about either hide a key in the challah right after. It's the first challah after Pesach. I know that.
Okay.
Don't ask me. I haven't a clue, Terry. We'll have to look
Me
it up.
neither.
Okay.
We can always talk to Rav Google.
Yeah, Rob, Google. I know my granddaughter makes hers that way. My niece makes hers that way. I don't know.
I think it's.
Well,
supposed
they're
to
good
also
challah
create
bakers, so.
nuts.
Yeah.
If
It's supposed to
you're
be
interested,
good
I'm
nuts.
happy to do one just on braiding, and you guys can have your dough ready, and we can just do braiding.
Oh,
You know,
great.
that's a great idea, Andrea.
So Terry, we can talk about that.
Okay.
That
Yeah,
book's
so Andrea's gonna do stuff for the next 2 more Fridays. And since we have you, and the question was, what should we do? So Andrea, you can lead the discussion, and after you
Yeah, what do
teach
you
us.
guys want? Do you want to do baking? Do you want to do cooking? Do you want technique?
Andrea's
What
an
do you want?
amazing chef, cook, baker, whatever.
Thanks,
So
Terry.
Hey, Andrea, do you have your mom's kichel recipe?
I do, but I don't think that that's enough for YouTube. That's a long recipe.
I know, but oh my God, I've never had anything like your mother's kichel. I think the last time I had them was your bat mitzvah.
So do people want to try
Joey,
to
now
do
you're
this?
aging me. Come on.
Do people want to try to do challah again, and we'll learn different braiding techniques, or a different, like a dessert or something?
Well, why not? I would like to see braiding techniques. We could get our own challah ready. And then when Andrea comes on to opens up her class,
Yeah.
we could just do all, with our ready-made dough.
Okay, what do people think of that?
Sounds good. I would also, I know I'm an outsider, but I would suggest, how about ruglach?
Yeah, I was going to suggest rugula, but.
Nobody in here is an outsider.
We're all in this together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thanks for the input, and we'll figure it out and let you know. But
Yep.
next week, same time, right?
Yeah, let's do a little bit later if we're gonna do braiding.
Okay,
Let's say 11 or 11:30. We'll let you know the time. We'll send it out.
okay.
So I don't belong to Temple Emanuel, so how could I get involved with that? I found the link on Jewish Boston.
If you go
Yeah,
on if you go on the Emanuel website,
It's either on the Temple Emanuel, or if you can put your email address in the chat box. Caitlin, can you take a note of it and we can send an email out to everybody?
Oh, great idea.
Yeah, so if you're not getting Temple Emanuel emails, just put your email address in the chat box and we'll send you an email about the next program.
and if you want to know about other things, if you go on the Temple, www.templeemanuel.com/event, no S, EVENT, there's a listing of all the events that are coming up with links. Okay?
Great.
Terry.
What? TempleEmanuel.com/event.
Terry, can you put it in the, or Caitlin, can you put it in the
I
chat?
can definitely put it in the chat box. Sorry about that.
Okay, so our 6th grade challah is starting
just did it.
4th grade challah.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so our 6th grade challah is starting just like our 4th grade challah with the snakes connected at the top. Up to this point, we're exactly the same. This is how the fun starts. I'm going to take my 2 outermost and I'm going to cross them over. It doesn't matter which side you cross over for this first step, but the next step will matter. You want to make sure they're kind of spread out. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the strand that was at the top now and bring it down to the middle. And then I'm going to take my second most strand and bring it up to the top. So now I still have 2 strands here at the top. Everybody with me so far?
No.
Kinda.
We'll do that again, Andrea.
Yep. Do you want me to start from the beginning or just keep going?
Start from the beginning.
Okay.
And if you could just move your screen up just a little bit.
Move it up or down?
That's perfect. Just because you were
That's
looking more at
good.
the same.
Okay. So now I've got 6. This is before I've crossed anything over. The most important piece here is you want to make sure that you have space in the middle because you're always going to be bringing your piece down to the middle. So you want to make sure you're giving yourself space. So I'm going to take my 2 topmost pieces and cross them over. I happen to cross my right piece to the top. Doesn't matter which one. The only thing that matters now is whichever one's at the top is the one that you're going to bring down.
Ah, okay.
So you can see here, if I bring this one down, there's nothing stopping it.
Right.
It has to be the piece at the top that's going to come down. So this one's going to come down and over.
Into the middle. Ah.
Okay.
Joni, you know this.
No, I can't, I mess this up so badly every time.
And now I'm gonna bring these ones back, and now I'm gonna take my second one from the right and replace that one that just came down. And now I have these 4 down here and my 2 at the top. Now the one that was at the right is the one that's at the back is gonna come over. Okay, I'm gonna take the one from the left and bring it back up. This one's gonna come back down. And the one second from the right is gonna go back up.
It's
One from the
beautiful.
middle is gonna come down. I'm running out of a little bit of room, so I'm just gonna move up a little bit. And then second is gonna come across. This one's gonna come back down. Second is gonna come across. This one's gonna come back down. Second is gonna go across. Top coming down. Second across. And so again, I'm always coming down to the middle here. Can you guys see this okay?
Yeah.
Down, second across, top down, second across, top down, across. And then I'm getting a little bit tight on the end here, so I'm just gonna kind of do a quick pull and then just scoot it under at the edge. And that's what
Nice.
It just doesn't seem, I don't know, it just doesn't come naturally like the other ones do. That
so
one's
it is a little bit more complicated because it's not a traditional braid,
right, but it looks so much nicer.
but it looks like a much higher, it gives it some
Right.
height.
It's a
So it's-
substantial, yeah.
So here's my cheat that I did last week is I made a 3 braid.
Oh, yeah, you pop the
and,
other one.
and then
on
I put a smaller 3 braid on top.
top. Yeah.
And my daughter approved.
Oh, okay.
That's actually a really well-known cheat. You guys can you see how much this one is already risen?
Yep.
It's probably come quite a bit. It's a bit bigger than when we first started it.
Right.
Andrew, can you do that again? There was just a glare on it.
Sure. Is that better?
Oh, yeah.
Just
Definitely.
gorgeous. Ah,
So
They
that's
look
what they look like when they're braided.
Does it matter if it's braided differently, how long it takes to rise, Andrew?
Nope. Exactly the same amount of time.
Does it bake in the same amount of time as well?
Yep. Doesn't matter. So the only difference in the recipe is how you braid it. Your ingredients, your rising time, your baking time is all the same.
Andrea, where did you learn all this?
So I love being in the kitchen. I've been in the kitchen for as long as I can remember. I took a class with I was actually in a raffle. I won about 7 years ago, I won a raffle at one of the Chabads for a one-on-one challah baking class with the Rebbitzin.
Groony.
Yep.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And so I got to spend an afternoon with her making challah, and I liked it, but I didn't love her recipe. So I've kind of been tweaking it ever since.
Yeah.
And I do it every week for my family. Every
Oh.
Friday I make challah.
Wow. This is your own recipe?
Yeah. So this is kind of one that I've taken and adapted a little bit over the years.
Mhm.
So I was not a challah baker before this stay-at-home thing. But
Yep.
for the last 4 weeks, my daughter and I have been trying a different challah each time. Last week was the best, and now we're on to this week, and
I would love,
we're still
Caitlin,
working it.
Can you put my email address in the chat? I would love it if you guys can take my email address and send me pictures of how they turn out. I want to know. And if you have questions, concerns, anything like that, feel free to reach out. But I would love to see how your challahs turn out.
Okay.
And we could share everybody's challah if people are open to it.